I heard these words: I don't forgive, nor will I, nor will my wife. We don't forgive. We can't forgive. We can't forget that the IRA killed our son. Those are words that I heard spoken by Colin Parry, and they are words that he had repeated in more or less the same form over and over since 1993, when his son was the victim of the Warrington High Street bombing. 2 bombs were placed by the IRA in bins on Warrington High Street, one just outside Boots the Chemist and the others outside McDonald's. When they exploded, those bins were turned into bomb castings, and the cast iron of the bin into shrapnel. Jonathan Ball was 3 years old, and he was killed outright at the scene. And 5 days later, Tim Parry, Colin's 12-year-old son, died of his wounds in Warrington General Hospital. Colin and his wife Wendy were understandably distraught, and their distress was where they poured all their grief and anger. Their distress at seeing their child, his face swathed in bandages, die in front of them as they held his hand and NHS staff turned off his life support machine. But they give him a legacy beyond his death now. For after their distress, they poured their grief and anger into works of reconciliation. They made documentaries about Irish republicanism and the struggle for peace in Northern Ireland. And in 1995, they opened the Tim Parry Jonathan Ball Foundation for Peace, which is based in Warrington still. And over the last 15 years, now in its new centre, has tried to pioneer peace building, first between different factions in Irish republicanism, then moving into anti-radicalisation work in this country. They also provide trauma counselling for families who are the victims of terrorism, and for young people in Ireland and northwest England whose lives have been scarred by violence or deprivation or lack of opportunity, and who are therefore at risk of perpetuating violence themselves. At the time of the Manchester Arena bombing, which many of you will remember, and which was about this time of year, and affected many young children returning to school for the start of the new term, they were conducting anti-radicalisation training and switched their focus from that instead into grief and trauma counselling for those children who had been profoundly injured and for the families that had been bereaved. But they still do not forgive. They know Gerry Adams quite well, and they've appeared on platforms with Martin McGuinness. They get along well with the leaders of Irish political republicanism, but they do not forgive. The language of forgiveness for them and for many people who've experienced a severe trauma is so very loaded, so very associated with ideas of reconciliation and with peace and with letting bygones be bygones, that even peace builders like the Parrys, even people who have done a tremendous amount to build on practical works of forgiveness, cannot bring themselves to use that word, forgive. Again and again, 77 times, 70 times 7 times, myriad times, however, they have moved beyond unforgiveness. They have tried incredibly hard not to forgive easily, but not to be trapped in hatred and unforgiveness and fear and pain. They have worked I believe, to embody a real legacy of forgiveness. And they've done so with a great deal more charity and love and forgiveness than I could imagine myself showing in their circumstances. Because to forgive and to be forgiven means to let go of anger and hate, to not be trapped there, even if we can't say the words, "I forgive." The word forgiveness means to let it go. And I apologize to any parents of young children who immediately, when they hear that phrase, will slip into a Disney song. To let go of bitterness and anger and rage, which are ultimately, for those who have been harmed, sources of enduring pain, and ultimately are a focus on us and our own egotism, is to escape and be released from a prison of self into which a person who has hurt us can try to imprison us too. To act on forgiveness, to let it go, is to accept very gradually, and maybe it will take 70 times 7 efforts to do this, release from a parable of bitterness and retribution so that we can enter into a new, inspiring alternative and move there also towards something new, a new creation. The peace and justice of a coming creation and of the kingdom of heaven are terribly slow in coming. But they march forward together and never quite seem to arrive here on earth. But by Christians persevering with the work of letting go, the slow forgiveness that demands our effort to not be trapped by self, but recognize the worth of other people, even if they have harmed us, that allows us to hope for and becomes signs that that marching justice and peace are part of the Christian hope of forgiveness. To live a life based on forgiveness is not necessarily to say the words, "I forgive," and certainly not to say them easily or glibly when there is real trauma and hurt behind the cause that requires forgiveness. But it is to embody the patient work of bringing peace and justice as its heralds a little closer, to becoming free to greet the one who is the Lord of peace and justice. Even, and almost especially, we can not say the words, "I forgive."